So now I'm going to speak a bit further about the community support program, and I'm going to have a very short introduction to the 2024 call for proposals. At this moment, I want to just mention that this call has not been publicized yet, so it's going to be publicized on the upcoming week. So we provide the up-to-date information. There might be slight changes, but not so extreme changes rather than the ones that you are going to see on these presentations. So what is the community support program? The community support program has been established around 2 years before, and its aim was to support the Region 8 side groups that they have interesting ideas and they want to create some technological solutions for their local communities. So this is how it started. We had our first call for projects into 2022. We had the second call past year in 2023 with some amazing projects that have been already took place from past year. And what we want for volunteers to think is to establish their local teams and consider this, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and consider what are the problems of the local communities based on these goals. So the projects must have a good connection with the side groups, should engage a significant number of the volunteers, and they should take into account cost effectiveness, environmental sustainability, trust enhancement, relevance to users and community buy-in, and accessibility. At this point, let me mention that we usually receive many proposals, so your project might be very worthy, but they might not be able to get funded due to budget limitations, or maybe offered a lower funding than requested. But HTV also have other call for proposals, so you will have a variety of options, and you can also try again in another call for project proposals in the future. So this is how it started. It started 2 years ago. We continued past year, and we're looking forward to continue this year as well. And what we want to achieve is to achieve very relevant proposals that they have high quality. So the starting point for a project should always start from the community. So you need to a bit discuss with your local community and understand what are the problems. So and after you identify the problems, you should partner with organizations and leaders in order to start working on how you can find some technological solutions. So projects must focus on people rather than starting with the technology and then going to find the problem in the communities. So a very starting reference is that the final deadline is going to be around September 6th this year, so in about 2 months from now. The funding this year will be mostly focused for micro project up to $5,000, and we expect that the project will take place on a 6 month period after the starting date of the project. So this is the specifications of this call. And what is new about this year is that we are going to have some technology impact categories. What this means that we can understand there's a broad range of challenges in the communities, but in this specific call for projects, we are going to consider the following 4 sustainable development goals. The one will be the quality education. The second one will be the sustainable cities and communities. The third one will be the climate action, and the fourth one will be life on land. Let me explain what does this mean. This means that the primary goal that you are trying to serve is one of these 4. Of course, you're going to impact also, you're going to target other sustainable development goals. But the main one that you have to target is one of these 4. This means these 4 are the quality education to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The second one is the sustainable cities and communities to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. The third one is climate action, take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. And the fourth one is life on land, to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, and halt and reverse land degradation, and halt biodiversity loss. So these are the 4 technology impact categories that we are going to include in this year call for projects. And what is new for this year, it's the applications process flowchart. Let me also start with a laser point. And this starts with a letter of intent. This year, we are going to start with just few questions that we're going to ask you. And this is what you have to submit until September 6th. And in this letter, we are going to just check if the project that you are going to hold is inside the scope of the call for project proposals. So either it's out of scope, so this is you will not be able to submit the main application, and otherwise you will go to the main application. You will have around 10 days after the letter of intent to submit a bigger application to share with us more details about your project and about how you're going to implement it. And this final application will go to a pool of reviewers that we are having, and they will decide of course, most of the projects, if not all of the projects, are worth funding, but we will have to make some selections. So these reviewers will have some judging to these proposals, and then we are going to have two options. Either you will get the initial approval, or you might get rejected. There's also a third option that we usually take leverage. This started past year, which we call second chance. So based on the comments that the reviewers are making, we might ask you in 2 months after the first decision to resubmit your project with the modifications that the reviewers have suggested. And then we can have either go to approval again or go to the reject phase. And all the projects, they take the initial approval, they go to what we call ORIMS and legal review. So we are going, they are going to some offices of the IEEE to check all the risk and legal problems that this project might have. And after everything has been addressed for the issues that they have identified, we go to the final approval and funding, which goes directly to your IEEE section. And you have to communicate with your IEEE section in order to receive the funding and start working on the project. What is most important is after the final approval, you will need to provide some monthly progress report updates and, of course, a final report when the project will finish in order to show to us the impact that the project had to your local community. So all in all, this is the process for the applications. And at this point, Miriam, I think that we can return back to you in order to proceed with the rest details about how to achieve more relevant project proposals.
Right, so thank you very much, Theodoros, for providing a clear context on the role of the Region 8 Committee and the work that is ongoing in humanitarian technologies and the call focus. So now we're going to drill into some more details on what you should think about as you're preparing a proposal. So firstly, as Theodoros has highlighted, the main focus of this call is addressing community. So first of all, you need to think about who is the community and what we mean by a local community. So that is a grouping of people in a vicinity that is within easy reach of that group of volunteers that are going to do the work. So these type of activities require an ongoing engagement. You're going to be doing different type of activities. So the community that you're going to work with needs to be within easy access. When you're coming up with the concepts that are relevant for the community, first of all, you need to keep in mind what are the actual needs that this community has. So that requires an engagement. We should not be coming up with project ideas and then going to a community and saying, would you like this? It's more focused on actually engaging with the community and undertaking a needs assessment, and then from that, determining what the community actually is interested in. So if we look at the community, so first of all, we need to undertake a needs assessment. So that means you sit down with community groups and you work out from their perspective, what would they be interested in that can have a technological aspect. So when you're submitting the proposal, you need to provide a very clear statement of what are the underlying problems that you have verified with the community. So it's not your impression, it's what the community have actually told you their needs are. The statement should state who in the target community you've engaged with, and then what community groups and organisations the project will collaborate with. So obviously there will be a group of site volunteers, but the site volunteers may also work with other organisations. So it depends on the context in a specific country and area, who those organisations might be and who the community beneficiaries are. Then we have to look at, knowing what the need of the community is, how does the proposed technological innovation both cost effectively address these needs that have been identified in an appropriate and a sustainable manner? So that requires looking at the call topics. So if your engagement with the community comes up with a project idea that isn't one of the specific topics for this call, then it is better to submit it under a different call. If it is aligned with the topics that this call can support, which is quality education, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, and life on land, which is primarily supporting forests and maintenance of forests, then you would identify the technological solution that is appropriate to that community and can be sustainable within that community. Then you need to provide insight into where the project will be located and how far physically the beneficiary community is from the proposed team of volunteers. So that's important to be able to demonstrate that this is something that will be accessible and sustainable over the life of the project. And also to provide an insight into the population size that is expected to directly benefit from the project intervention. Then after we've identified the needs, the technological solution and the location, then it's necessary to be able to explain how this project is different. So are there any projects going on in a similar domain or in a similar activity at either a national or a local level? And then you need to be able to explain, why is this project different? Because obviously if a community has an existing project running, it doesn't make sense to have two competing projects in the same community. That would only cause confusion and defragmentation rather than anything else. And then finally, it's important to be able to clearly articulate how the technological focus is aligned with the specific thematic areas and with IEEE technical areas. So you're all familiar with the IEEE technical areas, so you need to be able to address both aspects. Then when we look at the implementing team, it's important that there's an appropriate mix of expertise and skills. So that requires an analysis to be able to be undertaken in relation to what capacities are required to implement this project, what capacities already exist in the beneficiary community, what specific capacities the implementation team provide that don't exist, and finally, how capacity in the beneficiary community will be enhanced. So there needs to be a program of tangible capacity building activities that will achieve sustainability. So at the end of your intervention, the technological solution that has been deployed is stable and the community is fully able to support that themselves with some remote support. It's important in the proposal to outline the relevant track record of at least some of the team members. So as you will see in the call for proposals, the proposals need to be led by a full IEEE member. Normally, a proposal would have a team of volunteers that are involved, and they would have different expertise that's complementary. So you have enough capacity across the team to do the different type of activities, and you need to be able to demonstrate that at least some of these team members have had a track record deploying projects in the past. So as a team, you can build capacity with the new members, and the experienced members can provide the necessary support and guidance. And then finally, you need to be able to explain the roles and the proposed contributions of each of the volunteers that's part of the team. Then when we look at the implementation plan, so we need to have a clear work plan. So if we think about what's involved traditionally in a work plan, we have work packages, which are in different areas. So we may have a work package on capacity building, on dissemination, on technical work, and then on deployment. And within those work packages, you would then have a breakdown of tasks, and it would be clear who is responsible for what tasks, what the expected timelines are, what the outputs from the project would be, and what your milestones are. So what different stages the project will go through as part of reaching its overall aims and objectives. Then we need to have a well-detailed sustainability plan, because ultimately when we go to a community and we assist them in deploying a solution, there needs to be sustainability. So we need to understand who is going to manage the deployed solution after the initial grant phase, and ideally there would be enough capacity built within the community that they would be able to do most of that locally with some remote support from the existing implementation team, but we need to know what the long-term proposed solution is for this. Then if there are aspects that require upgrading over time or maintenance, who is going to be financially responsible for that? So who takes ownership of the solution when it's deployed? And that would normally be a community group. So it's important that that's well established as part of the initial needs requirements and baseline study. And then we need to show that there's a clear capacity building plan which ensures sustainability and maintenance of the solution by the local community beyond the grant period. We need to have a risk plan. So every intervention has risks. So it's important to identify what those potential risks are and outline what the mitigation plan is. So if this were to happen, this is how we're going to address it. And it's beneficial for the project if that risk plan is as detailed as possible. So then as the project is running, you can update the risk plan iteratively. And then finally, it's important to identify if there are any local or national approvals required. So sometimes there's approval required before a project can start. So it would be important that that would be articulated in the proposal, and that you would say what's involved in doing that, if it's already been approved in principle, subject to the project being launched, and if not, what's involved and what time frame would be required and any risks associated with that. Then we want to be able to assess the impact of the proposal. And the only way we can do project assessment and impact assessment is to have a baseline. So as part of the initial needs requirements and the engagement with the community, the project team would identify what is the current situation. And that would be in the form of both qualitative and quantitative indicators. So both figures and qualitative, which is how things will change in real terms. And then it's important that the proposal outlines what the expected impact is going to be. So we should have a number of key performance indicators, and they should be somehow linked with the qualitative and quantitative indicators that were part of the baseline. So at the start, we had this situation, and during the project intervention, we expect the situation to change in this way, and by the end of the project, we expect it to be at this stage, and 6 months after the project, we expect it to be at this stage. So there has to be something by which the project team can actually assess the impact they have in the long term. And this links in with what is expected to change. So what are the short, medium, and longer term improvements that are envisaged within the life of the project? So in summary, if we look at a checklist, we need to have a clear understanding of the needs of the community. So that requires an outreach activity and an engagement with the community over a number of weeks to identify what their needs are, and then have an active involvement of the local community and appropriate capacity building activities. Then from the technological perspective, because this is a technology deployment program, we want to have appropriate use and necessary adaptation of technological innovation. And there needs to be a clear alignment with the thematic areas that are open. So quality education, sustainable cities and communities, climate action, and supporting the management of forests and risks associated with forests. There needs to be an active involvement of site group volunteers. And as Theodoros mentioned at the start, some of you are already members of site groups. Some of you are interested in this area, but you need to engage with the site group that's already set up within your section, because in most sections there are site groups. So it's a matter of engaging with your section leadership, getting an introduction to the site chair, and engaging with the site chair so that the work is channeled in a consolidated way. So it wouldn't be advantageous for a number of volunteers in the same section to be working not in a consolidated way. Then you need to have a clear work plan, outputs and milestones, a clear sustainability plan, risk management plan with mitigation measures, qualitative and quantitative indicators to measure impact in the local community, and finally an appropriate budget. So when the call is launched, there will be more information on the type of budgetary items that are appropriate, but in general, you understand that this is a volunteer program. So any of the time that the volunteers contribute is voluntary work. There is no payment towards time, there are no honorariums. So the budget aspect is primarily around things that require financial support for the project to be implemented from a technological perspective. So if you were doing a project on management of risks in a forest, for example, there may be different sensors required. So that would be a legitimate budget item that you're going to put something in place, and that requires some financial use of resources, and that would be eligible. So it's important to look very clearly at what are the types of budget items that can be applied in this context. And bearing in mind as well that these are micro projects, so you're doing essentially a proof of concept, but something that has sustainability. So it's important that the scope of the project is in line with what's possible, both in the time frame and with the financial resources that you can apply for under a grant.